minsan silanganan, alam ng puso sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang inirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupi, di ka pasisiil, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw. May dalagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidinig. Lupa ng araw na luwalhati ng sinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mga atin na pumatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Hi there, good morning. This is Yashika Torib, and in behalf of our president, Mr. Dante Klinkang II, welcome to our forum on the future of maritime transport and logistics, brought to you by the Manila Times. So this forum aims to give us a clear view of what our shipping, logistics, and transport sector have to say about their future, which has for years relied so much on customer interaction, and how this pandemic changes their sector and how they deal with it. So today we'll be having some of the biggest names and experts in the maritime transport and logistics to discuss the trends and direction that the sector is taking. And so to begin, let me introduce our first speaker. He is a proud member of the Philippine Military Academy, Sinagtala class of 1986. He pursued higher education here and abroad to include prestigious institutions such as the National Defense College of the Philippines, the United States Naval War College, and the Defense Academy of Shrivenham, United Kingdom. As an accomplished sailor and commander, he successfully commanded 5 Philippine Navy vessels and handled several naval operations across the country. With decades of exposure, experience, and expertise, our speaker was appointed by President Rodrigo Duterte in December 19, 2017 as the 37th Flag Officer in Command of the Philippine Navy. His leadership ushered the Navy to the missile age with the firing of the very first missile from naval warship. He also initiated the submarine program as well as the approval of the fast attack interdiction craft acquisition of the Philippine Navy. His outstanding stint as the flag officer in command of the Philippine Navy was very well recognized when the president conferred him the Philippine Legion of Honor during his retirement ceremony. A month later, he was sworn in as the administrator of the Maritime Industry Authority or Marina. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, netizens, here is Vice Admiral Robert Empedran.
Sorry, nakamute pala ako. But thank you very much, Yashika, for that very kind and very generous introduction, well-researched introduction. But as I said, it's an honor and privilege for me to join you in this webinar, which is entitled The Future of Maritime Transport and Logistics, which is hosted by Manila Times. I hope I can present to you my uh, PowerPoint presentation in 15 minutes to save time. Can we proceed? I have three presentation outline, which is the first one is the building on gains, where we are, and sailing forward. Next slide. Building on gains, next slide. These are the significant gains that the maritime industry, our Philippine industry, has been in the past decades or so. We are the premier supplier of maritime professionals in the global seaborne trade. There are 1,600 seafarers around the world, and 1 out of 4 is a Filipino seafarer, and that's a good number for our country. The seafarers are major contributors to the economy via their remittances. And our country is number 5 major shipbuilding country in the world. Just recently, the Hanjin in Subic has shut down, but hopefully we will operate that soon with the coming of the Cerberus company from the United States taking over the Hanjin industry. Now present with the trend and opportunities, our maritime industry has bright prospects for the future, particularly in filling up the projected world shortage of officers estimated at 92,000 in 2020 and 147,000 plus 5 years after. Before the pandemic, we saw an increase in visitor arrivals via cruises, which we estimate to reach more than 400,000 passengers with 402 port calls by 2022, as well as to expect further growth of domestic shipping and mainly due to the country's archipelagic configuration. Next slide, please. Moreover, demand for shipping, cruise tourism, and shipbuilding is projected to increase due to the influence of global trends such as continuing population growth, increasing urbanization, and growing volume of trade, among other factors. Lastly, the intensified demand of coastal and inland waterways transport system is expected to provide alternative costs and energy-efficient mode of transport and extend route distance to serve more in highly urbanized areas. Next slide, please. In sustaining and building upon our gains and with the crafting of a long-term plan for the maritime industry, it's time for us to commit ourselves to implement our strategic plans. As I continue with my term as the administrator of Marina, I came up with a 10-point agenda for 2020 till the end of my term, hopefully in July of 2022. It contains 10 priority programs as shown in the screen. The focus is on strengthening the Marina as an organization, promoting the welfare of our employees, implementing governance and transparency, and continued compliance with international obligations of our country. Next slide. In our desire to make the Marina responsive, we are currently engaged with the Development Academy of the Philippines for the modernization of the organizational structure of the agency. Among our plans include the creation of an additional position for Deputy Administrator for Administrative Affairs that will be responsible for the day-to-day administrative operations of the agency. The existing office of the Deputy Administrator for Planning will be primarily in charge in the implementation of the 10-year Maritime Industry Development Plan. We likewise intend to create regional offices for the National Capital Region, Cagayan Valley Central Zone, and the Mimaropa areas. Next slide, please. Of course, we are focusing on the promotion of welfare of our employees by boosting the morale of employees through rewards and recognition. In fact, four of our of Marina employees will be going abroad for training. Three will be going to WMO in Europe. So there are four personnel of our organization that will be doing training for more than a year abroad. Next slide, please. To win the trust and confidence of our stakeholders requires implementation of efficient system and effective processes, which is a way to eradicate actual and perceived corruption in the agency and in the maritime industry as a whole. We intend to ensure that the policies that we will craft respond to the present and anticipated challenges of the maritime industry. Next slide, please. With the advent of digital age, we are left with no choice but to automate and to provide a platform for the online processes of Marina, particularly to serve our frontline, our seafarers and other stakeholders of the Marina Industry Authority. Next slide, please. As a responsible member of the international maritime community, the Philippines, through the Marina, is currently taking serious steps to prepare the country for its mandatory audit under the IMO, or what we call IMSAS, as well as its continuing commitment to respond appropriately to the audit findings and observation by the European Maritime Safety Agency on the country's maritime education, training, and certification system. As the primary supplier of maritime professionals, we need to elevate our implementation of our obligations under the STCW Convention for Seafarers 1978 as amended. Next slide. Another component of my 10-point agenda is the implementation with Vigor of the 10-year Maritime Industry Development Plan. This is a plan which were crafted and collaborated by the maritime industry stakeholders as well as Marina. The 10-year MIDP has the ultimate goal of creating economic activities to enhance inter-island trade as well as to generate employment opportunities for our people while balancing them with safe, secure, seamless maritime transportation system. Next slide, please. As we sail forward to the future against the backdrop of the coronavirus 2019 disease and the adoption of new innovation in shipping, we need to prepare ourselves to brace these challenges. To ensure seamless, safe, and secure movement of people, cargoes, and ships within the national waters and even in the international waters, the Marina continues to implement its maritime safety plan that follows the framework as shown in this slide. Our lines of efforts shall be executed through intensified safety awareness campaigns, strengthened safety standards, effective enforcement, integrated IT systems, and risk assessment. As an end state, we shall observe safe marine operations, freedom from the threat of life and property, and protected marine environment. Next slide. To secure our maritime infrastructure, ships, cargoes, and people, we need to ensure that our vital sea lanes are protected against piracy and armed robbery against ships. To do this, we have to collaborate actively with our partner countries in the area of joint patrols and sharing of intelligence information, such as what we are doing with the ASEAN counterparts. Next slide. Protection of our maritime environment and our marine resources impact directly on the continuity of trade and commerce at sea. We need to ensure safety, the seaworthiness of our ships before allowing them to sail. We have been involved in global maritime incidents such as the oil spill that is currently devastating the coast of Mauritius Island, which gained international attention. An expert claims that it will take years before the effect of oil spill in the maritime environment and its marine resources surrounding. Next slide. Another pressing issue is the that impacts directly on maritime transportation and logistics is the promotion of safety of life at sea. The recent collision involving our wooden-hulled fishing boats that claims the life of 14 Filipino peoples are challenges that could be addressed by modernizing our domestic shipping, including our ship fishing vessels. Next slide. Also, the series of lengthy lockdowns in the world stranded thousands of our seafarers from coming home to their families have hugely impacted on the national and global economy as well as on the mental, spiritual, and up, the emotional lives of our seafarers. Some of them, their employment contracts has already been extended. Usually they stay at sea from 6 to 10 months, but some of them are at sea now for a period of 14 to 16 months. While those who are supposed to join their ship have to stay at home because of the lack of ports and airports that would allow crew change. While this is understandable for governments to close their borders to protect their citizens from contracting the deadly virus, the Philippines, our country, need to find solution to allow the speedy repatriation of its sea-based worker. And among them is the establishment of the crew change protocol and the green lane protocol for our seafarers, which allow them to move faster while they are going home or they are going to their new employment. The Philippines is currently preparing the Philippines as the crew change hub in Asia and the Pacific through the opening of various ports in the country. For now, we have the following ports open for crew change: the Port of Manila, Port of Kapinpin in Bataan, and the Subic Bay Freeport Zone. And we are looking forward to opening of more Philippine international seaports like that in Cebu, Zamboanga, Davao, and in other parts of our country, like Batangas. We have likewise issued an appropriate advisory for blended learning in order to allow our seafarers to continue their training programs so that we capacitate them to increase their competence so that we maintain our being the number one choice of seafarers by principals. Another important challenge that we may face in the future is the eventual introduction of autonomous ships, which may make majority of our seafarers irrelevant. We need to prepare them by diversifying our maritime workforce through skill enhancements so that they will have alternatives for land-based employment and even part of the autonomous ships which require very less people on board. And so we need to capacitate and strengthen the competence of our seafarers so that even in the coming of autonomous ships, they will be hired by the principals from other countries. Next slide. Finally, the efficiency of the country's maritime transportation and logistics will largely depend on availability of modern ships, a skilled workforce, modern ports, which must all be complemented by an enhanced maritime safety and maritime security regulation. I always believe that the future of our transport depends largely on the safety of our ships, the competence of our seafarers, and the security while they are at sea. That ends my presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Vice Admiral, sir. So before we go on with our next speaker, we would like to remind our viewers and netizens to just send in your questions, reactions, or suggestions. This is Philippine universities, the Ateneo de Manila University, the Tron College, and the University of Santo Tomas with a degree in economics. Immediately upon graduation, he served as the general manager of Soriament Steamship Agencies, and in 1996, he was the Philippine agent of Tasman Orient Line and Swire Shipping Ltd. 3 years later, he became the general manager of P&O Ned Lloyd, and by 2006, he was the director of Pathway Customs Brokerage. Today, he is the president of two transport and logistics firms, the M-Star Ship Agencies and Container Bridge Philippines. He also holds the position of director of the Association of International Shipping Lines from 2004 up to the present. He served the AISL board for several years in different capacities, such as vice president and treasurer. Come 2009, he assumed the AISL presidency and again assumed the same position from 2015 up to the present. As AISL's president, he established a closer interaction with the executive and legislative branches of the government. This led to a more constructive collaboration between AISL and the Philippine government. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Patrick Ronas.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Are you hearing me well?
Yes, Patrick.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Good morning, and thank you for Manila Times, and good morning, Admiral Empedrad. Very good presentation. So just to start off, let me go through my slides here. I don't know if it's in order, but here you go. So just to give you a snapshot of the AISL membership, we're currently about 36 member lines strong. If you need more information about this, you can basically go to the AISL.ph website to get details about the members of the AISL. Now, just to show you, we can't really tell the future until we take a little look at the past as to how things went. So, as everybody knows, Presidential Proclamation number 929 was given on the 16th of March, or signed on the 16th of March. Basically, lockdown started on the 17th. PPA, we were very glad for the quick action of GM J. Santiago and also of his staff, Attorney Mark Palomar, in giving us IATF IDs. We were able to give our members, or our frontline members, or frontline staff of our member lines, to be on board in their offices because of the mobility issues that were happening in the borders of Manila. And this went on to despite the DTI coming up with a memo in April with regards to authorized persons outside our residence. There's still a little bit of a confusion happening on the ground. DTI really helped us out in this one. Asik Sinpachet was very instrumental in making things work for everybody. So also with that, MICP Customs had a bit of an issue with regards to cases on their side, but they continue to process documents using the BOC portal. They a lot of people jumped into that medium just to make sure that their shipments get released. But with that, MICP was actually showing congestion as it was going up about 90%. So the real worry is that if one of our terminals in Manila becomes congested, then the other terminal, it's a ping pong effect. It's a ping pong effect happening there. So one terminal gets congested, the other is sure to follow. So to address that, a JA was issued by the DA, DTI, PPA, BOC, and Department of Finance to address the situation. This came out on the 2nd of April. At the same time, shipping lines offices made procedural changes. Again, staffing was an issue, mobility, public transport was closed. So everybody worked through emails. Even our clients, our brokers and forwarders, their mobility was basically hampered. There were also some English issues, buildings at the Mall of Asia or in Ecom, where a lot of shipping lines offices were, became very strict, lines were long. Some buildings had diplomatic offices. English was very strict. So despite all that, the frontline employees, seafarers, terminal operators, warehouse workers, and CFS, the container depot operators and truckers continued to keep equipment and ships moving while staying safe. And ships never stopped calling. We'd like to thank the Bureau of Quarantine for helping us out, ironing out some issues at first with regards to clearances of vessels coming into the ports. So what is the impact of the pandemic on the supply chain? So as you will notice, these are the major players in the supply chain. So you have your trucks, had issues as well. Drivers, their helpers cannot cross, cannot get out of their barangays. You may have the trucks, but you may not have. You may have the trucks, but you don't have the drivers to drive them. So that was an issue. Trucks can actually go out, deliver to areas outside of Manila, but then had a problem going back. So there's a lot of confusion on the ground. Of course, internationally, there were issues as far as quarantining of vessels are concerned, especially for ships coming out of China, your factory to the world. There were quarantine issues that were happening before they actually enter other ports in Southeast Asia. And then in April, you see with the quarantine, air freight cargo basically stopped. There were no ships coming in, no tourist arrivals, and the belly of the planes carry cargo. So when they stop, cargo movement also stopped. Again, because of mobility issues, infrastructures or some plants or warehouses basically had to close. So with that, it had an effect on raw material. There were raw material shortages. Vendors had low capacity. There was nothing to sell. If you go to your supermarkets at the time, there's only limited brands available. And of course, labor shortages before you can actually operate. You had to make sure you had barracks and basically the IATF limited the number of employees at the plant or a manufacturing firm can have at that time, and subject to conditions, which is really limiting. So this is a slide we lifted from NEDA. As you will know, the tourism industry is very much affected by all these. We're 7,000 islands. Tourism is one of our biggest, it's one of our big money earners or a big contributor to the GDP. And this is a problem actually for domestic shipping because, your resorts are all on these islands. So a lot of cargo move from Manila to the islands. And in that particular resort, as you will know, around it, when you go, you also go to restaurants, you do a little bit of shopping there. So that has affected the transport. The tourism industry basically had an effect on shipping as well. As well as on, at the end of the day, exports, because your factories are limited. There was nothing to move. So as of June, based on the figures, I'm looking at basically Manila, where 70% of the volume of cargo basically move. We saw an import decline of about 23% in Manila and overall 20% for the country, while exports declined 27% overall, down 29.9% in Manila. So the start of the decline was actually April when we had a sharp drop, but then volume-wise, cargo began moving after that. There was a big issue on imbalance of 4:1 between import and exports on equipment. This means for every 4 containers that are actually imported, only 1 container goes out laden and the rest of the other containers get out of the country as empty. It's a major cost factor for the carrier. So the move to recover, everybody's talking about e-commerce nowadays, and some of us, or most of us, have experienced it. Everybody has been ordering through Grab and Lalamove, having things delivered during the lockdown. This is a big thing for everybody, I think. Just to show you a figure from UNCTAD, it was a $26 trillion business in 2018, which went up in 2019. I don't have the exact figures from UNCTAD yet. But I guess in 2020 and moving forward, this will grow. This can be an opener for us. So in line with that, e-commerce, more portals from carriers are going to come up, especially that we see volumes moving stronger to the Christmas, moving to the Christmas season. There's an optimistic view that volumes will be only about minus 20%. It's very optimistic. Things will change depending on how the government reacts to the pandemic. So just to show you, this is the Benline online system. After the month during the pandemic, and because of the lack of mobility of people, Benline, although they have a network all over the world, they were able to come up with their own portal where you can transact your import processes. They're the first actually in their own network to have that. Very proud of it. So you can see from here that you can actually monitor the way your document basically moves. It shows you how many are lined up, being processed. You see, we've been doing things traditionally where we have people lined up in the front, in the front counters or in the counters, taking a look or making sure that they see the document, how they move. But this time around, you can actually see it actually move virtually on the Benline system. CMA CGM also came out with eCasi. I'm sorry, but the picture doesn't do really very good. But if you should see their landing page, you'll be surprised. They don't look like a shipping agency, but look more like a premium coffee shop. But it has the same features. You can actually monitor the way your documents are being processed. And of course, MERS always in the forefront. They give you full information of what's happening with your cargo, plus a little bit more. It tells you or updates you current movements on vessels, most especially very important for you because it keeps track of how you do your business with them. And they take it a little bit, they take it a step further. Now they've got CBOT, an AI, where you can actually speak to them with regards to any concerns. Just being in your laptop, on your phone. So Uh, we see the adoption of digital technology across players in the industry, both private and in government. We've seen that happening. Um, Admiral Empedrad talked about digitizing some processes in Marina. We have the terminals pushing for online payments for their services. They've had it for about 2 years now. Prior to ARTA stepping into the picture or PPA stepping into the picture, usage was only about 12%. You can just imagine, having a platform being used for the past 2 years, but only 12%. But I think chances are this would be increasing as of now. I mentioned the word government focus to hasten approvals. You see, one of the things that when you have an online portal, you have to be able to issue an official receipt. So lines pay, but then again, if your particular OR is not approved by the BIR, then it's not accepted. You still go back to your own old brick and mortar way of coming to the office, picking it up, filing it. But if assuming you have an approval from the BIR, then things go seamless. And from what I know of, it takes about 8-9 months before you can get an approval, or even up to a year. But I don't know with the pandemic now. I'm sure that everybody will get delayed. Government, I will say here that government should continue giving priority to moving goods through the ports and across borders despite lockdowns. It's very, very important. During the pandemic, whenever the status of quarantine would change, there is an issue on the ground. It takes a little bit of time for people who are running the borders to take heed. And different governments have different rules. Provinces will, or even up to the barangay level, will have different rules in place. And we say that infrastructure development should continue. Yes, thank you very much. We've got the Harbor Link Road that takes you 30 minutes, 25 minutes to get to Bulacan, wherein it used to take 2.5 hours before. We welcome that. Now, Calax is coming on stream. Certain segments are already starting to move. I'm sure it will generate better flow of movement, safe tracking costs, these trucks, turnaround time, better turnaround time at the end of the day. We should continue to do that. And maybe after the pandemic, we should relook. Basically, the business will really shoot up because we go on a catch-up phase. We have to make sure that we continue the development of our ports, maybe deeper drafts, added length of quays, just to make sure that we go with the flow of how trade will continue. Now, I talked a little bit about the container imbalance a while back. This is very important. This is something that we should all take advantage of, or take a look at, or how to address it. In 2017, you had I'm talking about Manila here again because that's where 70-80% of trade happens. In 2017, the ratio was 3.33:1. Yeah, a lot of work needed to be done. In 2018, it even went up to 3.53. In 2019, it went to 2.17:1. But as of 2020, it's worse. It's come down to 4.0:1. So moving forward, we've seen articles, we've read about how top global brands had issues with regards to getting their materials. China is a factory to the world. So the pandemic have taught them that they should source their products from somewhere else. That's why we say move to sourcing from other countries will be a practice. You've read about companies moving out of China, putting up factories in Southeast Asia. Right now, from what we know, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and even Indonesia is getting a big piece of that market. So I think we should take a look at our long-term roadmap. Out. But the industry as a whole should not be generalized and subjected to rhetoric and self-serving interests. Instead, Philippine exporters and importers should be encouraged to do their homework. There are 30 international shipping lines in the Philippines and nobody's forced to work with one or the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ronas. Once again, that was Mr. Patrick Ronas of AISL. Thank you so much, sir. So our next speaker is a multi-awarded Cebuano leader in the transport sector. He is a graduate of the University of San Carlos in Cebu and the president of 4 corporations: Asia One Power, Asian Marine Transport, Super Shuttle Roro, and Philippine Roro Terminal. Among the many highlights of his career is spearheading the full implementation of Strong Republic Nautical Highway, or if you remember, that's the SRNH program. He also pioneered the Batangas shipping hub and laid the groundwork for the ASEA Roro connectivity program. In 2010, his vessel MV Super Shuttle Roro 2 was awarded first place by the Bureau of Quarantine, the Department of Health, and the Port of Batangas for being the cleanest vessel of the year. He was also awarded first place during the first Private Finance Advisory Network Philippine Clean Energy Investor Forum for the business plan developed by one of the corporations he leads. It was deemed as one of the most promising clean energy investment opportunities. Netizens, please welcome Mr. Paul Rodriguez.
Good morning. I'll repeat again because I guess it was muted. I'm sorry about that. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Administrator. Um, I would like to present in a different way as most of the data has already been presented by Patrick, and a lot of the plans of the government has been presented by the Administrator. So I'd like to report on the activities or the status of the domestic shipping side. As everyone is very much aware that during the ECQ declaration in March, everyone was caught off guard. And practically the factories were disrupted. So a lot of production and movement of goods because of the lockdown has been disrupted. But we in the domestic shipping industry were always continuing in operation. You never heard any complaints from the Visayas and Mindanao that they are running out of basic essentials, food or medicines, because the domestic shipping industry has been in continuing operations without any disruption. There was a slowdown, yes, because of the slowdown of the factory. The delivery of the goods that are coming from the factory going to the port were affected because of so many checkpoints, and there were some confusion on what can get through the highway and from town to town or city to the next city, there were several checkpoints. But in general, I would say that the domestic shipping industry has served the entire country its needs. Um, Currently, the market has really practically dropped very significantly in April and May, and started to pick up on June. Although we were never back into the normal as prior to the pandemic situation. The passengers, as you are all aware, that there is a restriction on the passenger movement um, during the ECQ. However, when the GCQ was already up, the government allowed the movement of passengers. However, on a 50% capacity of the vessels. No? But because of the LGU, the local government units of different towns, municipalities, or provinces has their own policies. It created a lot of really disruption. Um, there were some provinces or towns, cities that allows a passenger to come in, and but they have to undergo 14 days quarantine. That created some sort of disruption because at first they allow the passengers to go home and have a self quarantine in their respective residences. However, in the later part, the local government has set up their own quarantine facilities and mandated that all those incoming passengers, whether you are a resident of the respective town or province, to really compel them to stay on the government quarantine centers. And this has sort of prevented people from moving around because of this strict regulation. Um, as you're well aware that even the nautical highways, which we are supposed to be the connection, or I would say the extension of the Philippine highways, wherein you could have just drive through or ride a bus to go from one island to another, has practically been stopped. There was really a great challenge on passenger movement. The cargo movement has been very smooth flowing, so there was no issue on that. On the container side, it has been very regular. There were some disruptions for the time being due to lockdowns in Tondo and lockdowns in Malabon, but otherwise it was very well handled. In Batangas Port, where we are having a hub, we have a free flow. We were never been disrupted. So most of the factories from the Calabar zone, especially from the food sector, has been unhampered. So it was a smooth flow. Um, we just have some concerns for our future among the ship industry players of this upcoming revision of the Public Service Act, wherein it is now pending in the Senate, because it will open up, the cabotage law will, so to speak, would be open up. And we believe that the Filipino ship owners can very well handle the inter-island trade business. But there is no need really for the foreigners to come in, and we know our trade, and um, the foreigners will just be here to take advantage of the Philippine island industry. Um, this will hurt actually several. Of course, the Philippine ship owners would be very much affected because as you know, shipping is a very capital-intensive industry, and the cost of money in the Philippines is not cheap. And we have a short term. The banks here are there is no shipping bank in the Philippines that could finance you a very long term ship financing, unlike other countries like Japan or the European countries, wherein they're used to have a long-term financing for ships, and that's the reason why that the Filipino ship owners could not just easily afford to acquire brand new or relatively young vessels because of the cost of capital is so high, and you cannot just amortize over a long-term period. Um, This will put the foreign ship owners into an advantage because of their availability of capital. The threat here is that during the time of crisis and disasters, the Filipino ship owners are the first responders. We are the first to deliver relief goods and even movement of government rescuers to where it is. And since we are an archipelagic country, there's really a need of our own fleet. It's like just an extension of a highway. Now, if the Filipino ship owners will vanish because of this uncompetitiveness with the foreign ship owners, then in the event of any calamities or emergencies, we are not sure whether these foreign ship owners or operators would still be around to really go out of the way to help the communities. Um, a case in point is this during the time of pandemic, wherein uh, the Filipino local ship owners has been extending all-out support to both the community, giving them a lifeline support, moving basic essentials, even carrying sick persons from an island province to the mainland. And this is not more of a profit motive, but it's more of really a bayanihan, helping the island province for its lifeline requirements. And these are not maybe the priority of the foreign ship owners once there is such a calamity or an emergency. So we believe that uh, the government or the Senate should really look at it once again, that even in great economy nations like Japan, Korea, the US, they never stop or they never open up their cabotage because of national security reasons. And this is economic as well, because any country could just paralyze your economy if they stop serving, or they could just increase the rates of the freight. This will really create an economic dislocation. Um, Apart from that, is that the Philippine domestic ship owners are actually the training ships of all the seafarer industry. You cannot just graduate from the maritime school without having a 1 year onboard training. And as you know, it's very expensive to go on a training ship. If you have to go abroad and have yourself trained or experienced being a seaman. But in the Philippines, the domestic shipping companies are the ones subsidizing, training all these maritime seafarers for free. As a matter of fact, they're given free meals and even allowances while they are on board. So we hope that the Senate and the Philippine government could also realize the impact if the Philippine domestic shipping, will be not anymore be a part of a utility in the Public Service Act. Um, there are so many other more concerns on this, like national security. Our coastline is very porous. If we're concerned of smuggling and security threats, people could just come in and go if they are not anymore controlled by the Philippine government's Maritime Industry Authority. We hope that one day we will be heard so that the concerns of the Senate was on the high cost of shipping or the high cost of logistics. But in reality, the shipping side or the sea component, the sea freight component, is very much lower than the land component. Meaning the tracking component of the overall logistics cost is the most expensive. Whereas the shipping or the sea freight side is just less than what the land component or the tracking side are being charged. Of course, there are port charges. We have a very expensive terminal handling charge, and this is also another component. But when they look at the freight, they always look at only the freight without putting into the terminal handling charge, without incorporating the land transport cost. If they put this all together, it's going to be if it's going to be a door-to-door costing, then they will realize that the domestic shipping is very, very competitive. It's not what they had in mind that to ship a container from Manila to Davao is more expensive than shipping a container from San Francisco or from US to the Philippines. The unbundling of the costing must be done so that we will have an apple to apple comparison. Um, that is what I have to say for now. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to do some reaction on this on our industry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Paul Rodriguez. So that was a very important and very good presentation. That was Mr. Paul Rodriguez from Asian Marine Transport Corporation. So our next speaker up on the line hails from the logistics sector. He started his professional career as college instructor for the Holy Cross of Davao College. He is also a certified public accountant and has a degree in Bachelor of Science in Accountancy. He served as the Vice President for Finance of Phoenix Petroleum Philippines and the Controller of La Panday Foods Corporation, where he held various positions in its subsidiaries, including the Fresh Asia Produce as accounting manager and the Mindanao Fresh Produce Services Corporation as assistant accounting manager. Today, he is leading TransAsia Shipping Philippines and its subsidiaries as its president and CEO. When Chelsea Logistics and Infrastructure Holdings was incorporated in 2017, he was likewise appointed as the company president along with its subsidiaries, the PNX Chelsea Shipping Corporation, Fortis Tugs Corporation, Michael Incorporated, Bunkers Manila, Chelsea Ship Management and Marine Services, and the Chelsea Marine Manpower Resources. Netizens, here is Mr. Chris Alphonsus Damoy.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Admiral Pedrad, and good morning to all the viewers. And thank you for inviting us and be part of this event, Manila Times. So allow me to present my slides. So once again, good morning. The future of maritime transport and logistics But before I go to the meat of my presentation, allow me to bring us all to the reality of times today. The Manila Time published last August 17 that the next global depression is coming, and any optimism now won't slow it down. So they've been saying that in this article, they've been saying that all the supports done by various government all over the world is not enough, or the effort that is being put in by various government is not enough to avert the depression or the downturn of our economy now. And in the local scene, we have seen a lot of uncertainties until now. Even as lockdown eases, we have seen still a lot of local governments that has been very, very strict on their lockdowns, limiting movement of people, and even to the extent that certain areas really don't have passengers allowed on ships and even on the airline segment. And it was reported on May 21 that by CNN that DOLA estimates that 10 million workers will lose job, and some estimates even estimated to close to 20 million by year end. And our seafarers also is not immune to this. In fact, during the first 2 months of the lockdown, a number of seafarers has been sent back to Philippines without a job, and a number of seafarers also from the Philippines were not able to get employment overseas, with a lot of shipping industries has been affected, with emphasis to the cruise lines industries. And during the peak of the pandemic or the lockdowns, specifically during March, April, and May, the domestic traffic was very, very low. In fact, revenues were down up to 80% during the peak times in the period of April. And as mentioned earlier by Mr. Paul Rodriguez, this has recovered a little, but not yet, but still far from the pre-pandemic levels. And we see this to stay maybe in the next couple of years or so. And excerpt from the shipping associations of the Philippines, as a result, there's a lot of problems, unpaid customers and suppliers accounts, delayed vessel sea trials, uncommissioned vessel equipments, unfinished vessel construction and delivery, which is also effectively a challenge that impact the shipping industry. But we believe that as we are looking on the future, the darkest hour is just before the dawn, as we have tried to encourage everybody that we are on the lowest time now in the shipping and logistics business. However, we foresee that with the strong fundamentals of the country, our chances of bouncing back is faster. So going to the reality of things and how things are going before the pandemic, Philippines poised for sustainable growth given these indicators. Philippines being an archipelago of 7,641 islands, as published by NAMRIA. The international trade, 90% is carried by ships. More so in the Philippines, which is an archipelagic in nature, the 90% rule should more or less apply, considering that most of the bigger items like construction materials, equipments, can hardly be carried by through airlines or even by land, considering our archipelagic nature. And there are a lot of areas in the country which is not supported by any airport or to be able to transport items by air. Then we have a growing population. We are estimated to be at 110 million by year end. And what's the good thing here is more than half of our population is less than 24 years old, and less than 10% are senior citizens. So meaning to say these guys are really movers of economy, These are the millennials love to travel pre-pandemic, and prior to the pandemic, our GDP has been very, very strong at close to 6%, and prior year was 7%. Inflation was low. Employment rate prior to pandemic was high, and we believe though there will be a lot of unemployment projected towards year end, when things will start to bounce back, slowly employment will also improve. The lower poverty incidence pre-pandemic, the trade has been increasing, and tourism sector, which the shipping and logistics or the shipping per se is riding on, has been significantly growing in the past 5 years. Then internet growth has been improving with the entry of the third major players, which is expected to roll out by next year. And the government continues build program, which they commit that will not slow down even with this pandemic situation. Being a country of 7,641 islands, shipping is really a very key driver of the economy. So if you wanted to move the economy of the country in line with the recovery program, the shipping industry is one of the major contributor to that economic development. So without shipping, given our configuration, I think it would be very difficult for the country to recover, thus to emphasize the importance of shipping. As earlier mentioned by Mr. Paul Rodriguez, that there are some challenges in the shipping industry, both policies and existing challenge on the COVID. In fact, during the first couple of weeks of lockdowns in March, shipping was not given too much attention when it comes to importance of it in the movement of essential services and goods. We find a lot of difficulties moving our containers. Containers out of Manila may be okay, but repositioning an empty container back to Manila becomes a challenge because checkpoints, if your containers are empty, they will not allow entry to the checkpoints. But they fail to maybe understand that if they will not reposition the empty containers, they will not be able to take another cycle of load. However, if you look at all indicators prior to COVID, all segments of shipping in the Philippines has been improving, with the CAGR of container, both domestic and foreign, has been growing on a good rate of 5.9%. The cargo on per metric ton is also growing at 4% for the last 5 years. And even the passenger traffic has been growing at 6.6%. And to emphasize on the passenger traffic, even during the times way back 3 years, 4 years ago, when airlines tried to do cutthroat competition by bringing down the rates so much, in the last 5 years, except for 2020 this year, during this COVID, which is not normal, for the last 5 years, the passenger traffic in the country has never declined. In fact, the whole shipping industry always outpaced or surpassed the GDP growth of the country. So meaning to say, as the GDP grows, the shipping and logistics industry always grows higher than the GDP growth of the country. So with the build program, we also see that there is a good future on the shipping and logistics in here, because transport of construction materials and even people and equipments can all be handled mostly by ships through shipping. And as the infrastructure development is being done outside the metropolis, outside NCR, bringing it to Visayas and Mindanao. And if you look at the Balik Probinsya program now of the government, the economic development is now also doing on the countryside, thus expecting that as the economy on the countryside develops, the purchasing power will improve, thus will result to more tourism and more movement of goods and services. On the logistics segment, based on can research information, Philippines has really been growing on all segments of logistics. In fact, some conglomerates seeing logistics as the darling prior to the COVID. But even with the scenario of the COVID now, logistics is a major key component in the day-to-day currently, especially that we now on the new normal that most of our or a number of our transactions are done online. The fulfillment of the last mile is done by the logistics segment. So if you look at mostly now, even ourselves here has been doing a lot of online, maybe online shopping, online order of food, and other online services, which these segments of logistics is also helping on the fulfillment. The e-commerce trend in the country has also been very fast growing. As mentioned also by Patrick earlier, that he'd seen high development of e-commerce in the region. But if you look at this pie, Philippines is still lagging behind against its peers like Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore. We're still far behind. But with the pandemic now, the maturity of the e-commerce has been expedited or fast-tracked. Prior to pandemic, Google and Temasek projected that Philippine e-commerce will have a CAGR in the next 5 years of 36%, bringing the GMV to $10 billion by 2025, coming from $3 billion in 2019. So this is a significant growth of which the logistics industry can also capitalize, considering that almost all e-commerce business will need fulfillment, which business like logistics will be the one to do it for them, because not all e-commerce companies has their own logistics. Some has, but it only serves a fraction of their requirement. And this figure in this slide only refers to e-commerce on shopping, but it does not include other businesses in the e-commerce segment, which needs also fulfillment, like online transport and food delivery, which is also expected to grow with a CAGR of 27% from a little over $500 million in 2019, seen to grow to $3 billion by 2025. So the future on the shipping and logistics is really bright. It's just that it is derailed by the existing pandemic, which, if you see, shipping and logistics is one of the biggest, one of the industry which got the biggest hit, because as reported by NEDA, the transportation and storage segment declined by 59.2% during the second quarter of this year, and other related businesses that shipping and logistics also contributes, like accommodation and food service activities declined by 68%, construction declined by 33.5%. So in this segment, shipping and logistics is affected, thereby the second quarter performance, and also seeing the third quarter to be also not as good as the first quarter of this year. In fact, the second quarter of this year, Mr. Paul Rodriguez, who is in shipping for the longest time, can attest to this, that the second quarter, specifically from third week of March up to end of June, is the peak period of the shipping and industry in the country, because it's the vacation or summer vacation, which people normally moves. Tourism is really high, both domestic and foreign tourists is coming in. And that's the more or less the only period which shipping more or less makes money and have some surplus, and the rest of the years are either break even or even negative. So it's only actually the third week of March to last week of June that the shipping industry can save money for the whole year. However, unfortunately, it is the period where the peak of the lockdowns is happening. So just to summarize the earlier things, the industry, the shipping and logistics, has key challenges and drivers. So prior to pandemic, we've been seeing strong economic growth, and our Department of Finance has been saying, and the NED has been saying, we have very strong fundamentals that you can weather this pandemic. So once things will be going back to normal, vaccine will be available, we believe, and as our economists have been saying, the Philippines can easily bounce back. Prior to pandemic, the increasing average income on OFW was seen, and we see when things will get back to its new normal, this will go back. Then travels, it may take time, especially foreign travels, but it's just a matter of time. There will just be a delay, say a year or a couple of years. Then e-commerce will continue to grow, and more innovation, especially during this time that most of us is using e-commerce. But there are a lot of also some challenges in the market. So volatility of fuel prices now might not be as bad because fuel prices now is lower than last year. However, this is also a not normal situation considering that demand all over the world and supply is still high. So there is oversupply of fuel resulted to fuel prices. In fact, this year was the record also on the oil industry, which the WTI or West Texas Index in the US recorded a negative price for fuel as low as negative $42 per barrel, which never happened even during World War II. Then highly competitive shipping and logistics industries because there's too much player, as mentioned earlier by Administrator Impedrad, that the industry is a bit fragmented, and thus the area of shipping and logistics is really highly competitive. There is excess capacity and or tonnage because we are one of the countries that have not done any phase out, even those ships that is aging more than 50 years old still running in our seas. And I've seen the presentation earlier of Marina Administrator Impedrad that in their 10-point agenda is really to upgrade, not only maybe on the type of ships that we have, coupled with safety and compliance to the IMO, which includes the Clean Air Act. So there's really an urgency for us to modernize also our country's shipping fleet. Then this is also highlighted by Mr. Paul Rodriguez that some changes in legal and regulatory requirement also pose challenges on shipping and logistics business, especially the opening of the cabotage, which will really challenge the shipping industry with the emphasis to those shipping operators that has invested heavily in the past years, and suddenly some foreign operators which has excess ships, the likes of China, will come into the country if that law will come into effect or will be put into effect. So preparing for the future. As a company, Chelsea Logistics, we improve collaboration with the government and local shipping and logistics companies. Collaboration with the government, we've been continuously coordinating with the government, talking to them, having some dialogue with the Marina, PPA, and other government agencies that has participation in the shipping industry. We've been in constant discussion with them how we can help each other, especially that in the past, dating maybe 3 years or 4 years back, when you bring in ships, like even if it's brand new, the average time from the time it arrived in the country up to the time it sails its maiden voyage in the country or do trade, on an average, it can run 3 to 4 months. That was 3, 4 years ago. It's not only one regulators, but it goes to all other regulators because the processes in bringing ships in the country, the major participator in the government are BOI, DOF, BOC, then finally Marina. But recently, with the strong coordination and collaboration with the government for ships that we brought in last December, from the normal 3 to 4 months, we're able to sail it in 20 days from the time it arrived the country, which is really a big help to the industry because the company who invested in brand new ships already invested tons of money, even from the time you sign the contract with the shipbuilder, which is 24 months, minus 24 months, because the normal cycle of building a ships is 24 months from the signing up to delivery. Already spent tons of money from signing, keel laying, launching up to delivery, and you're already paying banks for amortization and cost of money, and your ships still waiting for 3 to 4 months. But thanks for the regulators like BOC, DOF, and Marina, that our recent arrival or the recent ship that we launched last December, we're able to complete everything in 20 days. So we are an advocate for fleet modernization and some regional partnership. We run a fleet of various brands: Starlight Ferries, which operate in Batangas; TransAsia, which operates in Cebu; Chelsea Shipping Corp, which operates tankers and tugs; and we have Supercat Fast Ferries, which operate various catamaran fast craft ferries. In these companies of ours in the group, in support with the modernization and in compliance to the IMO, and of course, increase the safety standard and allow Filipino people to experience world-class ride on brand new ships. Our group were able to bring in for the last 5 years and operate 11 brand new Ro-Ro passenger ships, which are all made in Japan. And we're proud to say that these ships are especially designed and modeled for Philippine waters. So talagang this started from scratch, and the naval architect from Japan really visited the country and visited ports, observed the behavior of our waters and the facilities around the country to be able to come up with this design specifically or especially designed for us. Then we also added 6 brand new tankers for the last 8 years, 3 brand new fast crafts, and on top of that, we also brought in some less than 7-year-old ships, another 3 of them. So for the last 8 years, we've been able to bring in at least a couple of dozens of various ships, which the biggest is our MR tanker with close to 30,000 GRT, the biggest Philippine registered ships in the country so far, and trading in the region. So we are a strong advocate of modernization. There are some supports from the government, but unlike the other countries like Japan, which they really subsidize modernization, but in our country, we understand that it may not be possible. As mentioned earlier by Mr. Paul Rodriguez, it's even tough to really get local financing for ships now, considering that a ship may cost you between $15 million to $40 million each. So one ship may be in a small size bank. If you bring in one ship, they might already hit their singer's borrower's limit, and it's also short term. And considering that investment on ships are high, it's very difficult to finance this on a short term basis. That's why we entered some regional partnership, of which some of our brand new ships from Japan is also financed by some Japanese ship owners, which supported also our modernization. So on the logistics segment, we also enhanced the digitalization. This is on top of expanding our capacity by building additional warehouses. We have one warehouse in C5, which is undergoing construction. We've seen high demand on warehousing and logistics with the current situation of the pandemic. So we're really capitalizing on this, but as mentioned by previous speakers, the only way to compete is really to digitalize everything, real-time data, because your customers, especially on the last mile, wanted to know that the whereabouts of their cargo or parcel, and they wanted to know when they will receive such. So this is very important to be competitive. And one way of doing this is either redevelop yourself or chances of partnering with some regional bigger players in the region which has experience in handling millions of transactions per day. There are a lot of ways to do this, and in our side, as part of preparing ourselves in the future, when recovery starts to roll, our system is digitalized. Then my concluding slide is most of the industries now are forced to be digitalized. And if we look at it, it's not the CEO or the CTO that drives it faster. It's COVID-19. In fact, some of our customers previously, which requires proof of delivery in hard copies delivered to their offices, a number of them now is doing or accepting online billing, online protocol of deliveries, and that will enable them to settle payments. So there are challenges now. We see this as temporary, and all analysis or research says that when company bounce back in previous recessions, when the country or the economy bounce back, the first to bounce back is really the transport and logistics business, because this is a very key component to move the economy or the country. So with the crisis now, what we really need is to survive this in the next, say, 12 to 18 months, saving cash as much as we can, preparing it for the next 12 to 18 months, then looking forward by then that the country, with the help of all the stakeholders, may it be the government, the players, and the end users, will help each other to be able to bounce back and navigate the new normal. Once again, thank you and good morning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chris Alfonso Damoy. He's from Chelsea Logistics. Thank you, sir, for a very detailed presentation. So once again, we would like to remind our netizens and viewers to just keep the questions coming. We will discuss that later in the Q&A part of the program. And so, our final speaker for today is a product of Ateneo de Manila University with a degree in economics. He used to be the traffic supervisor of Solar International Shipping Company in New York in 1989 until 1994. A year later, he served as the marketing manager of Sky International Shipping Company in Binondo, and in 2010, he moved to Sino Cargo Works in Intramuros, Manila. By the year 2013, he was appointed as the marketing manager of Asian Terminals Incorporated, or ATI. Friends, here is Mr. Reggie Rivera.
Yashiko, I think, Yashiko, I think there's another one sharing on the screen. Okay. Hi, can you all hear me now?
Copy, Reg, copy.
Okay. Hi. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone here in this group. I have been doing presentations online for I think for 10 times already, and I still cannot get accustomed to the fact that my son is right there doing online studies, and my mother is over here cooking nilaga or sinigang. Anyhow, I must start off my presentation by commending my partners in the logistics industries. Much like them, the terminal has continued to operate 24/7. It is essential that we do so because the goods need to be free-flowing down to the very levels of the barangay. It is also important that we maintain the integrity of the port as an international gateway so that the goods get across to those communities, even to the levels of the barangays. Now, I have my presentation will be in three parts. Number one, it should define who we are, Asian Terminals. Number two, what we do. And number three, what are the value-added services that we perform to our port users, to our consignees, to our exporters as a terminal. So without further ado, let me start with who we are. Basically, ATI is being South Harbor and Batangas is operated by Asian Terminals. Manila being the main service hub for ATI. We are a Philippine Stock Exchange listed firm since 1996, and we are part of the expansive network of Dubai Port. Modesty aside.
Live screen.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Share screen. Share screen.
Oops, sorry. Hello, are you seeing this? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're
Yes,
seeing
sir.
this now? Okay,
Yes, sir.
sorry. Let me just, where did I lose you guys? Sorry. Did I lose you at the start or?
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. All right. Like I was saying a while ago, sorry for the disruption. We are part of the DP World Network. Modesty aside, DP World has around 78 terminals being operated globally. ATI per se locally has 3 decades of industry experience, expertise, and excellence, and we have a diverse workforce of around 2,000 staff with local and global experience. These are some of the highlights that we've had in 2019. In 2019, the container terminal division handled around 1.66 million TEUs or 20-foot equivalent units. It's noteworthy to mention that since 2015 up until 2019, that volume has been increasing by an average of around 15-25%. 2020 would have been the same had it not been for the pandemic that is hitting us right now. In terms of revenue, we have generated around 13.3 billion for a total of income of around 3.7 billion. We also handled 170,000 CBUs or completely built units. These are the cars at the Port of Batangas. We've handled 4 million domestic passengers in Batangas. And all this we did while incurring zero harm and spill incidents. Now I go to what we do. Okay, I go to where we are at right now, which is Manila South Harbor. The capacity of the port is around 1.35 million TEUs or 20-foot equivalent units. Other than the containerized, we also handle the general stevedoring division. Anything that is not containerized, it is via the general stevedoring division. The capacity there is around 1 million. And for Batangas Port, the other port that we handle, that ATI operates, it's situated exactly around 108, 110 kilometers from Manila. And right between Manila and Batangas ports are industrial zones. Now, Batangas was conceptualized primarily to cater to locators or manufacturers that are situated south of Manila. Having said that, from the volumes before of only around 11,000 out of a capacity of 350,000, by now, Batangas is doing around 200, 230, 250,000 TEUs on a per annual basis. Having said that, these were traditionally 250,000 TEUs that were supposedly in Manila. You talk about traffic now in the metro area. Just imagine how it would have been had Batangas not been there to cater to the locators that are south of Manila. In the bigger scheme of things, I think it's to the best interest of everyone here that for those accounts that are located south make use of Batangas, and those accounts that are located near Manila make use of the Port of Manila. Other than the container business, we also handle the car imports, and also the 4 million passengers that made use of Batangas as an entry point domestic. Okay, other than the seaports, of course, we have the dry ports here. Totally, we have around four dry ports. We have the NCD. The NCD is situated around 2 kilometers from Manila South Harbor. It serves its purpose well primarily because it's a facility where we can transfer long-staying cleared boxes. So in a way, if the yard utilization shoots up, uh, we transfer boxes cleared to NCD so that I will have enough breathing room in the terminal. We also have the ICD. It's a bonded facility, and it's located right smack in the middle of Manila and Batangas. Now, ICD is critical in the sense that manufacturers or importers can make use of that as a storage facility for a JIT delivery. Again, I go back to what I said a while ago, that ICD will have manufacturers located very, very near the place. So instead of the containers being stored at the terminal, the containers can be stored at ICD, and they get picked up soon as cargoes are needed already for production. We also have the ECD. The ECD is like 2 kilometers away from ICD, and it's an area where empties from the shipping lines, from the consignees can be returned so that other exporters can also get the empties there, bring to their plants, and stuff it with export cargoes. So that is how it all works out as far as the terminals and the dry ports are concerned. How we add value? Um, the logistics community, shipping community is quite dynamic. There will be days, there will be times when issues will come up. I could not go on talking about South Harbor without going back to a project that we did in 2019, first part of 2019. I think it was Patrick who was saying a while ago that the Philippines is an import-dependent economy. Fact is, for every 4 containers coming in, only 1 goes out as export. So any given time, there is a surplus of 3 empty boxes that are either in our yard, at the depots, or like what happened in the early part of 2019, remained mounted on trucks. So that was an issue that we had. And when that happens, a scenario where a truck cannot pick up an import box, primarily because they still have an empty box mounted at the back. So what we did was we spoke to several lines. You can see the lines here among 9 shipping lines. And we tried to come up with a destination for shortage empties that is common among all of them. And it took a while before we got this done. But eventually we found out that China ports are short of containers. Well, that's obvious practically because China is very, very strong in exports. I think there was one who commented earlier that China is the factory of the world. So chances are containers are needed there for exports to other countries. Now, what we did then was, this is how it was before, before ELSA. You have a ship berthed, let's say for instance it's CMA, you can only load the empties of CMA. Now, if CMA vessels arrive, let's say every 7 days or every 8 days, the scenario there is I could not take in much empties from the consignees, from the shipping lines, because the space inside the yard is still filled up with empties. They have to wait for 7 days or 10 days to get their empties back to the terminal. We felt that there was the need for the terminal, that the shipping line had the need for a platform where they can easily reposition the empties out of the Philippines and into other shortage areas. So what happened after ELSA, or the Empty Loadout Shipping Alliance, as we call it, is that for any vessel that is here, for as long as it's a member line, any empties from any of the member lines can load there. So instead of the empties dwelling in the yard for more than 7 days, that was cut into half. Because you have 9 members, and almost every day you will have a member vessel berthed alongside. So meaning almost every day, you will have a scenario where 500 to 600 empties are being loaded out. So empties do not stay longer than they should at the terminal. And what happens is the gates are open for the empties to come in. I do not have to settle for a double transaction basis for empty returns, meaning you need to pick up a laden import prior you can return an empty. That's not the case anymore. Empties are liberally getting into the terminal. That is for South Harbor. Now, as I was saying a while ago, we also have the Batangas port. This is the process of how things are being done from discharge to BOC and then to the manufacturing place. Basically, cargoes get discharged at either port. They get to be cleared. And if they're cleared and there's not enough space for the consignees, they could either bring it at ICD. They can bring it ICD, and then they can go pick it up if and when the cargoes are needed for production already. Now, if that is done already, once the containers are picked up and then brought back to the consignee warehouse, you will have now a facility where, one, you can return the empties at our facility, ECB, or you can directly return the empties in Batangas, in South Harbor, as empty or as laden. So that is the complete cycle for discharge and export for containers. Now, talk about the CBUs. Modesty aside, Batangas is the main car carrier, the main port for car carriers. Approximately 70% of total car imports are discharged at the port of Batangas. This is the multi-level parking facility that we had inaugurated like a couple of years ago. Upon storing and prior to delivery, we undergo the units undergo the pre-delivery inspection. Now the pre-delivery inspection is also inside the port, and if it's already ready, the consignees can then pick it up either using domestic RoRo or using delivery using trucks for direct delivery to Luzon dealers. So this is how the CBU operations is at the Port of Batangas. Now, in line with the government's effort to mandate the digital platform, ATI has also started way back, I would say some 3, 4, 5 years back, embarking on the digital platform. I think it was Chris was mentioning a while ago that the pandemic actually jump started. Well, it's true in the sense that the paradigm shift started already, like some 5 years back, but the pandemic fast tracked the growth of the digitized platform. For ATI, we now have the e-payment portals wherein transactions can be paid using BDO and Metrobank online. We are working with more banks. We are contacting them so that we can have a wide variety of banks to be in the e-payment facility. We also have the web truck and the import facility. This facility gives you visibility over the containers, over the ships, for as long as they have Wi-Fi connectivity. And lastly, some 3, 4 years back, we implemented the tabs. It's a terminal appointment booking system. It's a system wherein you get to spread out the deliveries or the truck transactions going to the port. Gone are the days when you have like 500 trucks within 1 hour. Everything is in order. Everything is spread out across a 24/7 period. So that enables us to pre-plan. That enables the truck to wait shorter than before. It manages the traffic not only outside, but also in the yard and at the gates. So these are all the digital platform that we have been implementing over the years, and we do expect that the number of users will jump exponentially, what with the government pushing and mandating the digitized platform. So just to summarize what I had presented, the terminal keeps the trade moving by focusing on customers. We put customers, focus, and operational efficiencies or excellence as top priorities as we work to keep it moving. We are strategically located and operationally integrated dry ports and seaports, and we have an end-to-end logistics solution. Again, we are trying to promote faster cargo flow through digital platforms. We have the tabs for orderly pickup. We have the ATI e-payment portals, and we have the real-time cargo monitoring and visibility through the apps, WebTrack, and Import. And of course, we continuously expand and develop new infrastructure to support future growth. We are working on additional cranes for South Harbor, plus an additional area is being refilled or infilled for additional yard. Our projects have economic impact on the wider community, bringing jobs to localities. And also, we integrate sustainability as a core company philosophy, protecting people and planet by following stringent safety and environmental standards. And we also invest on green technologies to reduce carbon footprint, fuel-efficient engines, hybrid equipment, solar panels for offices, etc. That's basically the presentation. But before I end, I must commend all the government agencies, particularly BOC, PPA, DTI, ARTA, and other agencies. They've worked real hard to make sure that things normalize, that goods get to be delivered, and that life goes on. We are one with you in making sure that one, the pandemic is restrained, and that making sure that the goods get across or get or reach the communities that they need to get into. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Rivera. That was a very enlightening presentation. And that sums up all the presentations and talks from our guest speakers. That would be Vice Admiral Robert Empedrad from Marina, Mr. Patrick Ronas from the Association of International Shipping Lines, or AISL, Mr. Chris Damoy of Chelsea Logistics, Mr. Paul Rodriguez of Asian Marine Transport, and Mr. Reginald Rivera of Asian Terminals. So before I read the questions that were sent by our netizens, we would also like to recognize our partners, AISL, Asian Terminals Incorporated, FastCat, Chelsea Logistics, Bright Maritime Corporation, Magsaysay MOL Marine Incorporated, and Cargo Safeway. So to our dear speakers, I would like to go on and discuss the questions sent to us by our viewers. So the first one is addressed to Vice Admiral Empedrad, sir. The question is, what is the position of Marina on the Public Service Act, particularly on the foreigners entering our shipping sector, sir? The question is from Ms. Carmela Huelar from the Manila Times.
Thank you for that question, Carmi. That's a good question. In fact, we presented our position paper on the PSA, and allowing foreign ships to flight our routes will be beneficial to the public, and it will enhance competition. But meron kasing, there is a cabotage law that states that yung 60-40, they will amend that. Uh, we put a collatilla to that we will support the 60-40. We allow foreign competition, but on a 60-40 basis pa rin. Ibig sabihin, if there will be foreign competition flying our routes, it will be owned by 60% by Filipino and 40% by the foreign. So, ibig sabihin, even if there are foreign ships coming in, it's still being controlled by the domestic domestic shipping owners. So, yun ang position paper namin dito. We allow competition with foreign shipping, but it will be a 60-40 owned by a majority owned by the Filipino ng ating mga kababayan. That's our position paper.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Admiral Empedrad. So we hope that answers Ms. Carmela's question. And our next query here is addressed to Mr. Damoy of Chelsea Logistics. Sir, how much have you lost, including your subsidiaries, in the shipping transport business due to the pandemic? The question was from Mr. Eloy Calimoso of Seaway Shipping Digest. Mr.
The second
Damoy?
quarter, as mentioned, was really a bad month or bad quarter for the shipping. And for our whole group, including the subsidiaries, because revenue was even down to the lowest 10% during the first 4 weeks of quarantine, which resulted to an overall loss of 900 million pesos for the first quarter. But this includes losses on passive investments. But operating income and EBITDA is still positive. It's just that the shipping industry is highly capex intensive business, which you will incur huge depreciation as well as cost of money or interest, which brings your bottom line on a negative. But EBITDA, we're still able to manage to have a positive EBITDA or cash positive during the first 6 months of the year.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Damoy, for the explanation. Thank you, sir. Our next question is for Mr. Patrick Ronas, sir, of AISL. The question again is from Ms. Carmela. So here it goes. So far, how was the pandemic and the ensuing lockdown affected the reefer containers, considering that these products deteriorate fast? Has the pandemic slowed down their turnaround time in picking up these cargoes, like from terminals? And has the issues been resolved, or is it still an ongoing problem?
Well, to answer you, um, the issue on reefers have been addressed. If you will recall in my slide previously, there was a joint administrative order addressing the withdrawal of containers, most especially on reefers, wherein trade-offs have been given, like the PPA giving free storage, just to make sure that they are withdrawn right away. So that addressed the issue as far as reefers are concerned. So I think there's no problem with regards to reefers as of the moment, but it's being closely monitored because in a terminal you basically have a limited number of reefer slots or reefer plugs. So very important that they are moved or turned around very quickly.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. And we would like to go back to Admiral Empedrad. We have a question here from Trisha Alcantara of Buhay Marino. Sir, will there be a chance for the government to subsidize the building of modernized ships, just like what our partners in Japan did, so our domestic transport can keep up with the reported increase in e-commerce and logistics, sir? We would also like to request Admiral to please unmute. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's a very good question. One of the plan of the MIDP is to modernize our shipbuilding capability for our domestic. We requested that there should be a help from the government sectors, the economic stimulus. One example is to strengthen, magkaroon tayo ng manufacturing of steels because when we build ships, the importations will be very expensive for our country. Kaya nga dapat tutulong din ng ating gobyerno sa pag-modernize ng ating shipbuilding capabilities. So these are the things that we need to work on, like for example yung mga taxes imposed when we build ships for our domestic shippings. Fuel are very expensive. Mas cheaper yung fuel from the other countries. So yung effect ng mga regulations ng mga support systems in our domestic shipping and in building ships are very high, very costly sa ating sa ating kababayan. So we need to get the intervention of our government to help out in reducing the cost of building ships, in applying in helping out our domestic ship owners. So ito yung sa tingin ko makakatulong sa ating bansa pag tumulong ang ating gobyerno to alleviate the domestic the shipbuilding of our country, and of course the domestic shipping, kasi kung mahal ang cost, may hirapan silang makipag-compete. So Marina is is working very hard to get the interventions of other governments. Thank you very much. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much, Admiral. And our next question is for Mr. Rivera of ATI. The question comes from Rodel of Business Mirror. Sir, at the heels of the blast in Beirut, how has ATI made their terminals and holding areas made improvements in handling some dangerous goods? Are there any sensitive cargoes for that matter, sir?
Hi, that's also a good question. We've always looked at safety of the personnel the port users, of our employees as the forefront of what we do as a terminal. Having said that, we have very strict policies when it comes to handling of hazardous cargoes. There has to be an initial advice or an initial declaration of the cargoes that are to be transshipped or discharged to Manila. We have gotten rid of those overstaying hazardous cargoes as well in the last month or so. What I can assure you is that we have at the moment a very safe and I wouldn't say hazardous cargo free, but explosive free terminal at API South Harbor.
Thank you so much, sir, for that reassurance. Okay, our next question is addressed to Mr. Paul Rodriguez of Asian Marine Transport. Sir, what really accounts for the expensive shipping costs before and during the pandemic? That question is from Mr. Eloy Calimosa of Seaway Magazine.
Well, the shipping of goods, the logistics cost before the pandemic and now under pandemic has no change. But what I was referring to earlier was there was this logistics index that was checked by Department of Trade and Industry, wherein shipping, the index in the Philippines is much higher as compared to our neighbors from Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia. No? So we were unbundling the total logistics cost in the Philippines. And we later found out that the truck component or the land transfer component is even much more expensive than the sea freight component. And that's how we presented it, that at the end of the day, the cost is not because of sea freight, but it's because of the land transfer component. Uh, um, the other cost is of course the port charges. Especially in our company, we invested heavily on ro-ro ships because we believe that transporting without using the usual stevedores or the arrastre would be safe. But unfortunately, in some ports, they still charge the way of doing discharging. So if only it will be implemented on a full terminal fee only, then we could have lowered our rates to our end customers. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir Paul. And then our next question comes from Mr. Edward Fernandez. This is addressed both for ATI and Chelsea Logistics. The question is, both companies have talked about the development of new infrastructure. Has the pandemic impacted CapEx plans from both companies or made them reconsider their expansion plans? And secondly, are either of the two companies planning to invest in other revenue generating sectors to ensure cash flow during the crisis? Sir? That is both for ATI and Chelsea Logistics. Let us first hear it from ATI.
Okay, for Asian terminals, we have had plans of expansion even prior to pandemic. I would not say that we have forgone of those plans. I would still like to believe that at the end of the tunnel will be light, that volumes will come in, maybe not this year, possibly in the next 2 years or so. We are not putting a stop or a cap on our expansion. Fact is, we'll have additional crane, we'll have additional berth length, and we'll have additional space inside the yard. That is again in support of the volumes that we foresee that are going to come back. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a temporary situation. I go back and look at my volumes in April, March, and maybe May. Those volumes were depressing. But effectively by June, July, August, in fact, by August, I probably would reach the high 99,000 TEUs on a monthly basis. That was my ongoing average pre-pandemic time. So meaning if I was doing 110 previously, pre-pandemic, I'm gonna do 99, 100 by August. That is a far cry from how I was doing some 3 months back when I was doing 60, 70, 80. I think things as we get accustomed to the new norm, as we get used to using the digital platform, and as manufacturers in China elsewhere start operating at higher capacities, volumes will get back, and there's no point in trying to cap or stop the expansions that we had planned initially.
Thank you so much, Sir Reginald. Let's hear it naman from Mr. Damoy of Chelsea, sir.
On the Chelsea side, on the shipping segment and logistics segment of our business, we don't totally stop CapEx, recalibrate our CapEx plan, focusing more on the CapEx that were created. With ensuring that this CapEx that we're bringing in is predictable with the funding, both equity and the financing side. In fact, we just got delivery a couple of weeks back of our additional brand new ship from Japan, but these were already committed 2 years back when it was started construction and delivered supposedly April and was delayed for 3 months from Japan. This capex is something that we cannot also defer or cancel because this is our commitment. And if we do cancel this one, especially your counterpart or Japanese, this will not only affect Chelsea as a company, but the reputation also of the shipping industry of the country for a ship owner canceling commitment of ships that are already undergoing construction, which they cannot have a taker. Because mentioned, the ships are designed for deep waters and especially designed. And on our logistics side, still pursue because it's going project, our warehouse project, which we see very promising because even it's still under construction, the booking for occupancy for that warehouse is already almost full because the location is very strategic, it's just along C5. And we see the demand on warehousing, especially that most people now will be, a number of people now is shifting to online services, online ordering, online shopping. And that shift also requires more warehousing requirement, especially for those areas that is near to the metropolis. Then on our infrastructure side, which is our part of our business, we still is pursuing but this is entirely different segment on shipping and logistics. But this is also in support to the shipping and logistics, like our proposal to the government to modernize ports or even airports. But this will still go a long way. So chances these things gets awarded to our company, then rollout of this might be a year or 2 years from now. So currently, we just recalibrate our capex based on the current scenario, but stopping it, I think, you cannot do for everything. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Our next question is for Admiral Impedrad. Sir, how accessible po is the IATF with our government agencies concerned with the crew change protocols and our manning agencies who bear the brunt of problems arising from congestion of ships at piers when procedures get slow? How many more crew change hubs are we expecting to open? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Yaki. First and foremost, there are three ports open for crew change now. The Manila ports, the Port Kapingpin in Bataan, and the SBMA. And through the direction of our Secretary Tugade of the OTR, we are going to open more ports in Davao, Cebu, Zamboanga, and even in Batangas. So these ports will be open in the future. We are coming up with a one-stop shop facility in the area, so that when ships are coming and seafarers are being brought down, there will be people who will look to undergo to administer the RT-PCR test and their transportation, so that they can come home to their respective residences. So we are in constant cooperation, coordination, and collaboration with the LMAs, even the
Mm-hmm.
agents and the government agencies involved, like the OQ, the OH, DFA, so that our published joint circulars, which is a green lane for our seafarers to speed up their movement, uh, will have an harmony in executing the protocols. So that's what we are doing. Constantly communicating with all involved, um, in to speed up the crew change, because our seafarers need to go home as soon as possible. Extended na kasi yung contract nila sa ships and they need to go
Yes,
home.
sir. That's correct.
So, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Our next question is okay for Mr. Paul Rodriguez. The question is coming from the Maritime Journalists Association of the Philippines. Sir, what was the last response by the government with the issues you pointed out about opening up our islands to foreign investors? How does this affect the new anti-dummy law and cabotage law? Sir?
Well, it's now in Congress. I mean, in Senate, Congress has already passed their version. So Senate is now deliberating um, with the direction of the 60-40 ownership by suggested by Marina. I think it will just be used as to skirt around. No, to be honest, I don't think uh, foreigners would want to have a local partner who will really run the show. If they are to send their ships here, they will be running their own show. So perhaps this 60-40 would just become really a dummy setup. So sad to say, what we are really concerned, since I am the president of the Philippine Coastwise Shipping Association, is that this will totally wipe out the small and medium-sized companies, which are really the backbone of the island province. I'm sure that the the fat business of the domestic shipping industry will be taken over by the foreign ship owners once they will allow foreign ownership. But to answer the question is that definitely it will just be a dummy Filipino partner. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Our next question is for Mr. Patrick Ronas of AISL, sir. Um, how important is digitalization in ports and shipping, especially now when the pandemic has slowed down almost everything, sir?
Well, for one thing, when you do things online, I'm sure everybody, if you've experienced that, when you transact with your banks, you don't have to be really there. If we can do that same for the way we transact business in the ports, the way we transact business with customs, customs have basically started out by coming out with their portals, although we would like to see more of that happening. They have a drive to eliminate, our government has a drive to basically eliminate face-to-face transactions. And I think for one thing, this government, a lot of the government offices have been slowly getting into digitalization as well. Even the field post, the field post with the new chairman there is also started. It's the biggest logistics outfit actually in the country. they do missionary routes and all that. They've also started digitizing the way they do things. PPA with their online payments. We're seeing a lot of that. Even Marina, you can get your licenses or I think certain certifications, if I correct, Admiral Empedrad. So this government actually, most government agencies are taking that drive to actually modernize or digitize things. I think this is the right time for everybody. Like Costos, for example, from what I know of, the current commissioner and his people are very much engaged. I mean, for us, for AISL, whenever we have an issue, they usually respond right away. They're very receptive to suggestions. So I think that should continue. And again, like to help each other out. But yes, I think digitization is key. The way to do things forward. And hopefully the third telco, Chris, can help hasten internet. I mean, there's a big need for internet usage all over the country. We cannot digitize without internet connection, Chris.
Yeah, well noted on that, Sir Patrick. So, group is also working on that with a number of also communication currently. But yeah, just to also react on the point, digitalization really this is a necessary thing now without the pandemic. We're really going there. Just speed up now because now becomes very urgent. Really wanted to compete, especially if you wanted to touch the flow of foreign shipping lines. They would really wanted to have you to provide them real-time information, and it will only be possible if you do investment in digital. I think that's the new normal with or without the pandemic.
All right. Thank you, sir. So for our last question before we wrap up, the question is from Mr. Dexter Vinyan. The question is for Admiral Empedrad, sir. This is regarding the Public Service Act. Dexter Vinyan is asking, what is Marina doing to prepare for this? And what is your advice to our domestic shipping companies, given that there is already a competitive scenario here, sir?
Yeah, listening to the comment of Sir Paul Rodriguez, dami lang ito. But again, um, dapat may parallel action din tayo. How do we improve our the capability of our domestic shipping and of course our shipbuilding and ship repair capabilities. Kaya nga sabi ko kanina, we need the intervention of government like lowering taxes, levy taxes, ang daming ano, and then improving the materials to be needed in shipbuilding, lowering the cost of fuel. So maraming factors to reduce the cost so that you encourage our domestic shipping to grow, to be modernized. One example that we published a MC wherein we make the wooden hull obsolete so that we modernize our shipbuilding capability. So ito yung mga kailangan natin, hindi lang yung 60-40, but there should be a parallel intervention from the government to stimulate economic activities in the maritime for shipbuilding and domestic shipping. So maraming pwedeng itulong ang government to strengthen our domestic shipping. So we are involved in this and we will be there to help. I'm in constant communication with the domestic shipping. Nag-uusap kami and tinutulungan din kami kung paano namin sila bibigay sila ng recommendation how can Marina help them improve their competitiveness. So kasangga ang Marina pagdating sa mga ganitong bagay. Thank you.
That is very great to hear, sir. All right. Thank you, sir. Is that it, sir? Okay, so having said that is our last question, we would like to request each of our guest speakers to please give some final words for our netizens who are until now they're sending questions. Final words. Let's start from Admiral Emperor.
First of all, Marina has recommended to IATF that we make our country international hub for cruise chains. So this will allow a lot of ships coming in. If you notice, ang daming barko dyan sa Manila Bay. Principals are coming here to do cruise chains. And this is a great opportunity for a country to stimulate our economy. Pag nandyan kasi yung mga barko, yung mga expenditure, like for example, yung mga logistics nila that they needed, it will infuse funds to our economy. It will also allow our seafarers to come home quicker or faster. And then hindi lang yun, the opportunity of allowing seafarers to be employed by these ships who are here. Siyempre, pag nandyan na sila, they would rather hire Filipino people, seafarers, rather than hire somebody na nandun pa sa malalayong lugar that they need to be transported by plane, which is more expensive. So allowing Philippines to be an IATF, to be an cruise chains, international hub for cruise chains, will do good for our economy. And yan ngayon yung fino-focus ng ating Marina in cooperation with the other government agencies and the Department of Transportation. So, yun lang, and stay safe. And let's always pray that we will be safe. We will not get the virus.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you, sir. Let's now go to Mr. Patrick Rona, sir, for your final message.
Well, the final message I wanted to say was that I think we had some technical glitch. I just want to repeat it again if I can. I just want to say that I think it is also mentioned by some of our friends here. You know, shipping is involved in 90% of what you see around you. So it's very vital. So it's very important that ships continue to move. As the pandemic is over, we'll basically see a big jump on trade. We would like to see more infrastructure offerings to interconnect cargo. Not does it only help move containers around, but basically creates a more robust infrastructure or a more robust system for the whole supply chain. We would like to see that. We'd like to see terminals grow as the volumes grow. It has to match. Modernization is also very key. Digital platforms should be put in place across. That will be a big help for everybody. We should ride this is now the tide for modernization, for technical change, and I hope that the government will also support us with the laws needed to keep things very stable. You know, we have to keep an open mind about the open market or about open trading. Our shores should be open for additional investments, and you need legislation or support from the government for you to do that. So that's all, basically, and I hope everybody stays healthy as we ride the storm.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry I forgot to unmute. But then let's now go to Mr. Paul Rodriguez of Asian Marine Transport, sir. We would also like to unmute, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. My final message is that I hope our lawmakers and our government would really seriously consider the position of the Filipino-owned ship owning for inter-island. I still believe that we can do better. save an essential industry which should be owned by a purely Filipino company. Um, History will tell that the Filipino ship owners are the first responders to our nation's crises and emergencies. We should not forget that. And just like power and water, uh, the movement of our essential goods are carried by the cheapest mode of transport, the shipping industry. So let us not forget the sensitivities of our industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul Rodriguez. And let's go to Mr. Damoy of Chelsea Logistics, sir.
Once again, good morning, and would like to thank the facilitator of this forum, and of course the speakers and reactors on this forum as well. So for closing is just wanted to wish everybody well. As mentioned is by Jackma, surviving this crisis alive will be a win. Then business will follow. We believe that the light at the end of the tunnel is not shut down for the industry. It's just really a matter of ensuring that we survive at least maybe 12 to 18 months of difficult times. Maybe in the next couple of months or three, it will have some improvement. But considering the magnitude of this, recovery will not be easy. With that, we continue to beg for support from government, whatever would it be. May it be some easing down of some rules by expediting processes, that will help a lot, or any other forms of assistance that the government can help the shipping and logistics companies to be able to operate more or less with ease, and that will help the efficiency of the shipping operators. And we request for patience to various stakeholders that our capacity to deliver the service that we wanted cannot be 100%, but we continue to endeavor to provide the basic necessities, moving the essentials, moving the LSIs, the APORs, and the OFWs. In fact, we continue to support that one in coordination with Marina and the local government to move LSI, APORs, and OFWs with free of charge. So we just hope for a continued coordination and cooperation and help among each other to survive this crisis. So let's be safe, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. And last but not the least, Mr. Rivera of ATI. Sir, the last message.
Again, thank you very much for having us around here. It's been a very productive session, and I'm sure the netizens here have also learned a lot. I have two things to say. Number one, the port will continue to work with all of you to make sure that the flow of goods remain to be continuous. It is essential that these goods get to the barangays. Number two, we will push forward with the digitized platform. This is probably the new norm, as it's supposed to be. It's been there for the longest time, and it's only now that we're really trying to, all of us, I mean, even the netizens are really trying hard to make it a way of life. Not just an exception, but more of a way of life. That's all I can say for now, and I'd like to say again, thank you, and please, everyone else here, stay safe, stay safe. Ingat.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay, and that sums up all our presentations and our questions and answers. Once again, we would like to sincerely thank our guest speakers, Vice Admiral Robert M. Pedrad from Marina, Mr. Patrick Rones from Association of International Shipping Lines, Mr. Chris Damoy of Chelsea Logistics, Mr. Paul Rodriguez of Asian Marine Transport, and Mr. Reginald Rivera of Asian Terminals Incorporated. And of course, we would like to mention also our partners, AISL, ATI, FastCat, Chelsea Logistics, Bright Maritime Corporation, Magsaysay MOL Marine Incorporated, and Cargo Safeway Incorporated. For our netizens who keeps on sending their questions, we will be forwarding these questions to our guest speakers on our group chat. So to our guest speakers, please check on that a little bit later. So once again, that concludes our forum, The Future of Maritime Transport and Logistics, brought to you by the Manila Times. We would like to once again thank our speakers for graciously sharing their knowledge and expertise, to our friends from the maritime industry, our Manila Times subscribers, the netizens who stayed tuned during this forum, the team who made this forum possible, as well as the Manila Times Maritime team, our maritime editor Carmelo Villar, and our fellow writer Genevieve Factao, and to you, thank you. Once again, I am Yashika Torib. Thank you, and have a safe week ahead. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye.